to our podcast. This week is a very special interview with Shannon in Windsor, Ontario. She is an expert in funeral home arrangements, and I thought, what better time to bring us to talk about ideas and situations that we all are going to face in our families, especially today, a very special day of 9/11. So Shannon, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, my name's Shannon, and like Tina said, I'm from Windsor, Ontario. I have worked in the funeral industry for about 3 years now, and I moved up. I started as a funeral attendant, and I moved up and got into the pre-arrangements. I am 39 years old, and I have been through many life situations like many others have. And I would like to talk the importance of pre-arranging your funeral and having things ready for your family.
What happened with you from the other side of not working in the funeral home?
On the other side, I did personal support worker for 14 years. I worked with a lot of Alzheimer's and dementia and many other disabilities that are out there. Was my background, and also my background was preparing families for their passing and teaching them the importance of being there for families and supporting them and supporting their loved one that is, next to pass away.
That's a very hard kind of counseling kind of feeling to be,
Yes.
to be amongst the families at that important time.
Yes. So doing that for 14 years, I learned that there was something else for me out there to help families. And here I am today, and able to be in that other side and also be on the other side as well. So
And what kind of things did you find with having your mom pass away? What were you prepared for all of those decisions and things that you had to do?
No, as prior to that year, I had lost a baby, and my mother was my rock, and thankfully she was there to be there for me to be at the funeral home, as I knew nothing about this industry and how things are done and what's important, what they're going to need. So when my mom passed away 11 months after that, thankfully I had my family again, because I was 17 and I had no idea of what to do and how I could even live without my mom, and what would she do in this situation. So I had to be her voice.
Oh, that's awesome that you had her. That's just such an important time to try and deal with things, and especially being so young.
Yes.
What kind of things did you not expect?
I guess I didn't expect to be the one to make these decisions. I didn't know what to really expect of anything. I didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow, let alone what was going to happen today.
And I think we're so based in the fear and the scared of the unknown and what to do, and especially when we're young, it doesn't seem to matter with age when we have to make these decisions. But I think you would have given anything to not have to make decisions during that time.
Yes, and it made it hard because there was no pre-arrangement in place. Whether knowing if I made the right decision, she never really talked about cremation, burial, what she wanted, what was important, what the cost was, how much she would want to have spent, things like that are really detailed, and that detail is so important.
Yeah, I talk about almost every podcast to have a family meeting with those loved ones around you, because these decisions aren't just even made just for ourselves, that we should do it for ourselves, but also for those, our parents and our kids and everybody. And we just don't take time to do that.
No, we don't. We don't think about it because we don't want to think about it. Many are scared to think about it, but it's definitely a good thing to be prepared, because it's really is a big burden off the family, and just knowing anything.
Takes all those decisions away that you've had to make because if
Yes,
you have questions.
yes.
I remember sitting in on my first funeral home arrangement from a customer that had passed away, and I was sitting with his wife, and she said, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And she just kept saying, I don't know. And we're like, well, if you don't know, no one knows.
Right, that's right. You can document things, you can say things to your families, but at the end of the day, everything changes. Just like the world changes, with how funerals are being today, with more of being a celebration of life with COVID. It's really definitely changed a lot of things, and I think that we need to prepare our families and ourselves so that in any time, in any situation, we know at last minute, we know those little small details that mean the most.
Because if we eliminated, let's say there's 100 decisions to make and we pre-planned and we just took away 50 of those decisions that the other family has to make, that only puts a few more questions that you have to make decisions on. So it's much easier
That's
to
right.
move on, to
Exactly.
not have to worry about that part. That's that part.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
Are there many people still burying? Um, are there wishes still for burying, or are there more for scattering ashes?
I think today, I think I think traditional funerals are still being held by a lot of the ethnic groups. They're still wanting that. Today, in our new norm, as they call it, a lot of people, like I said, are doing the celebrations. So whether they choose to scatter remains, or they will have a celebration of life at a later time. That seems to be what's been happening now. They find it a little bit easier, and we're trying to do our best to allow the families to come in and pay their respects. And that's the most important thing, is what the family wants.
Right. And especially during this time, either between our wonderful pandemic in 2020, where it changed how, I'm sure, how your company looked after things. What
Yes.
kinds of things changed in that picture?
Um, many things change daily, sometimes hourly. Just having the proper amount of staff available, because it's becoming more, there's more people. We have to watch and make sure that, people are coming in and signing their names and information in case anything happens, as we're trying to protect the families that are coming in here. Having a limitation of how many people can come in with gravesides as well, even because some people have chose the graveside services.
Right.
Um, so it's changed in many ways: documentation, registrations, to identification of picking up a loved one's remains from the hospitals or the place of death. It's changed a lot of things for everybody, and it's also changed a lot for families as well, because they were not only allowed to not be in the hospital, to be there for their last breath. Now they're coming in wanting to see their loved ones before any ceremony starts, so it's giving them a little bit of a closure for them. So there's been many changes through everything from the uh, Bereavement Authority of Ontario. So it's just keeping updated with them as much as possible, and having daily meetings with our staff, and just preparing everybody for the changes.
So how many are you allowed to be in a area at this time? Like, I'm sure it changes every month, but is there groups allowed to be with the?
We're trying to stick to households. We're trying to keep a small amount of 35 people. Some people are making appointments. That way, we've noticed we've been trying to help the families do 2 to 4s and 7 to 9s, just to be able to break up the groups as well. So that seemed to help a lot. Gravesides is 100. So we're trying to, it's gotten a lot better than what it was before. It was 10, and it was very discouraging for family members, as many people, especially in the ethnic groups, have large amounts of families. So how do you, how do you choose who can come and who can't? That's been the hardest part for the families, because they're already feeling lost and not having those hugs anymore, and just feeling how much people are there for you. And it's really awful. It's been really sad to see.
Yeah, I'm sure, because I think we all during that time, and there's so many feelings and emotions that we just want to be hugged. We just want to be around people.
That's right. That's right. And many families, we have people that come in that don't have anybody. They've lost their husband, they've lost their children, they have nobody. And next it's who's going to be, the guardian of that, and who's going to take care of all this. There's so many different
Scenarios, I guess.
scenarios. Yeah, there really is. And that's why it's so important for people to understand about pre-arranging and documentations and wills, and who's going to be there that's going to take care of it, whether it's a lawyer or somebody needs to be the person's voice to make sure that everything is going exactly the way they wanted it.
What are people mainly choosing now? What did you find in Ontario? Because I found in Vancouver, it was kind of half and half cremation and half burial. And burial was mainly for certain types of religions, I found, and cultures. But there was still kind of this half and half of cremation, but burial, but burial, sure, not just burial and scatter. And I don't know the rules around the scattering part, if we're technically allowed to scatter. I think people are doing it anyways. But I do know one story that I'll quickly say, is that I met a beautiful gentleman who cremated his wife, longtime wife, soulmate, I believe he said to me, and he lost her to cancer. And so he cremated her and then poured the ashes around this lake where they would always take walks and stop at the bench and sit and talk, and, this true love type of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And he went back to Europe after she passed, for about 6 months to 8 months, and came back and found out that the lake was gone,
Oh, wow.
that they restructured it and were going to be putting up a bunch of buildings. So now where he decided to put his wife is now going to be in a building, so to speak. So you have to be really careful on where you put your scattered remains, and maybe by choosing, because you don't really think, well, I'll just put it out in the ocean, or I'll put it like by the lake where he suggested, and then that all turns in in a year. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to also think about those things, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You normally wouldn't.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we found that it was kind of a 50-50. Um, More so, I think, because people that were wanting burial, um, they it had to be rushed, and it was very rushed for the families, because the hospitals needed to know if there was anybody in the hospitals. They needed to know as soon as they got into admitting where they were going, if anything was to happen. So I found that a lot of people, because of the COVID and only having allowed to have at that time, it was, every day it was like, first it was 50 people, then it was 30, then it was down to 10. It was constantly all over the place. And I found that with the scattering, I didn't see too many scatterings. Most people wanted to hold the cremated remains until they knew what they wanted to do. And right now, with traveling being restricted, a lot of people, even the Sikh communities, they couldn't go to the river, because as they also like to spread in the Indian Ocean, they couldn't do that because of COVID. So a lot of things really changed things. Now things are getting a little bit more lenient, um, letting families now travel within Canada. Through our company, we are both American and Canadian. So that is a little bit helpful that we're all to help the American and the Canadians, whether they need our help, with transporting or things like that. We try to do the best we can. But beforehand, before all this COVID, I found our place is very traditional. We do have a lot of traditional families. So I found it to be half and half, I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
What what kinds of what things are beneficial to prepare?
I think that the most important thing beneficially is that you are helping your loved one for something that is going to happen. We all pay for car insurance to protect our loved ones in case something happens. But now, we have to prepare for that will happen, because death and taxes will never run away. One of the other benefits that I like is that funerals do double every 10 years. So by pre-planning, you're locking your money in and preparing that if anything did go up in cost, the inflation cost of it collecting a little bit of interest will help pay for that. Now, that doesn't include the death registration. Those change, obviously, and it doesn't cover the cremation fee, because cremation fee can always go up, because a lot of them are privately owned through churches, or other funeral homes as well have their own cremation centers. So, yeah.
What kind of, for our listeners out there, most of us experienced 9/11. It was a scary, scary thought. Now we've experienced COVID, still out there. So we're always fluctuating and having to make these decisions. But can you throw us into something happening to someone in your family? What kinds of things from step 1 to 10 what would our day look like from that customer coming in? What would they have?
Well, right now, because of COVID, we're limited to having our staffs unless they have to. The biggest problem is having people don't own computers, a lot of the elderly. So we try to do things on Zoom, but sometimes it's really hard if their family isn't there to help them. So we do have them come in. They have to make an appointment, and we sit down with them and we show them the cost of things, basically finding out first what they want as a service, what is important to them. If they have their pre-arrangements, which it's a lot easier to do because I go in there with their file and I just say, this is what your loved one wanted. They are pre-arranged. Some families, they don't even know that their loved one is pre-arranged already. So that's a hard decision too, knowing they'll call you and say, okay, I think my mom or my dad, had pre-arrangements here. Could you check? So we obviously go through all of that, and we sit down with the families and ask them what they wanted. We showed them a video. We show the different caskets and different things that they can do for options of catering and things like that to make it easier for the family. And we try to sit down and find a plan for them. If they haven't been pre-arranged, we try to make it more clear for them so that they're able to choose the right package. As we do have packages, we do also it single pay, like it's singly. So if they want to just buy certain things, we have that available too for families. And then once we have everything clear, they are to be paid, services. When they're going through the services, they have to be paid that day, as we can't wait for payments because we have to be paid the day of service. So we try to explain to them as well. So that takes that burden away for the families to not have to worry about money and things like that. Because that's the last thing they're thinking, right? Is money. And
especially when the person hasn't done any planning. People I found didn't realize that when you have someone pass away, that you actually have to pay for it all completely in one go. Whereas when you pre-plan, you can pay over months or take
That's
your time.
right. That's right. So it's
So
kind of run into like a company that is like an assurance. It's Assurant Life of Canada. So it goes into a trust and it collects in case a funeral does go up. But um, you look at back in the 70s, I look at pre-planning arrangements and how much the change was different of the price of things. But then once the taxes came in there in the 90s, it really changed people. And I show them that this is the cost, and some of them will say, well, this is what my parents paid back in 1980. Well, things change, and that's why I always say pre-arranging is so important, because you don't want to pay more. You don't want to.
then you have to really.
That's right. That's right.
So when someone passes away, I guess the hospitals, they want them out of there as fast as
Yeah.
possible.
Yes.
And I understand during COVID, when it first started in March, Ontario was bombarded with
Yes.
trying to an overload of their section of the hospital with passed away people. And they were overflowing, and they needed
Yes.
they needed them out of there, is my
Yeah.
understanding. I don't know what it was like in British Columbia or any other area, but that would definitely cause an issue, because you have to quickly make decisions then.
Yeah. And I think that's why they now the nursing homes, long-term cares, things like that, funeral homes, hospitals, everybody needs to know, because we had satellite hospitals here holding patients waiting, not knowing. And I think that's when a lot of people had to start making those decisions. And it was really hard because people didn't want to talk about their loved one passing. But it was so important. We had to know.
Yeah, to move on and get it prepared of what.
Exactly. Because none of us knew in Ontario what was going to happen. I mean, it was so tragic in Italy and so many different places over the world. Um, people burying people in properties because in New York, because there was no room, and we just couldn't have that. We couldn't have that here. We had to take control and figure things out and get these families prepared for the worst. As much as we don't want to talk about it, is something important, and it needs to be taken care of. And the more we know, the more easier it will be for you as well for us, because we have to register the body, we have to do a lot of things, and now because of COVID, there's a lot more documentations and things like that. So we try to make it as easy for the family as possible, as much as information we can get.
Did you learn anything from being a driver to help others, families, when you were driving? Did you learn anything from that experience?
Yeah, I did. I learned like just driving the families to and from the services, and how much they weren't prepared, and you know um, families arguing and things like that, because that's what they wanted for their loved one or their mom or their dad, and not knowing and listening to their conversations of how unprepared they are. And a lot of them lived out of town and had no idea where even to start. So I learned many different things, and myself experiencing that. I had 3 deaths in less than a year, and for myself, and I know what it's like to be in their shoes. And I think that's why it's important for me to do this job, by hearing other people's experiences and having my own experience, that this needs to be talked about.
It sure does. And I'm so thrilled to talk to you about this today, because I think it's really, really, really important to get through to people on the true experience. As
Yes,
and I know each company, wherever you go to, tries to make it nice, but it really it's
it's reality.
life changing.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, just from the steps of it, if having to go find the money into their accounts, they need to have proofs of death. They need to have many things to be able to go to that next step to prepare for that funeral. A lot of people don't have somebody as a beneficiary on their accounts or things like that. And that's important too. There's so many different things. I could go and talk about this forever of how important it is to know, just to have the little details of wills and gatherings and who's going to be there, who needs to be called, what do I do, where do I go. You know, I think that the most important thing is listening to your loved one and writing these down. And it could mean nothing to you, but it means so much, just from picking out flowers to what they want to wear, to prayer cards. Do they want them? You know, because it's
Music.
really what's important. Yeah. And some people say, you know what, I don't want a funeral. I don't want this. But, you know, people need to understand that it is not for the deceased. It's for the living.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing.
That's why I like how it changed from in Ontario and Quebec. My upbringing was awake, where it was kind of sad and that type of thing. Whereas now we've tried to change it to a celebration of life, and,
Yes.
and that
Yeah.
that to me is so much happier.
Yes. Yes. And we're finding that a lot more. And I think that even before COVID started, that the cremation seemed to be what people were choosing now. A lot of people are going green as well. They don't want a casket, or if they have a casket, they want it to, you know, be able to disintegrate faster. You know, there's different many ways. And I say, you know, if you don't know what to do or where to start, I think that the first start would be making that appointment and just sitting down and finding that a funeral home that connects with you, because some funeral home might not connect with you, and that's okay, because it's finding that connection, that right person that's going to answer all of your questions and make sure that they're giving you what your loved one would want. And for yourself, you know, because many people, you know, you go out and you go to a nice dinner and something happens to you, you need to know, your children need to know, your loved ones and your family need to know what to do next. So I highly recommend just making that appointment. Don't be afraid. Don't, you know, some people will come in and say, well, it's bad luck. It's bad luck to do that. It's not bad luck. It's bad luck when you don't get things together and leave that for your loved one. Why do that? Just, it doesn't cost anything to go in and get a quote. Go to other funeral homes, try them all out. You know, listen, take the brochures, read things online, talk to your loved ones, find out what they want and what means the most to them. Maybe it's nothing big, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be big. It could be in your own backyard. It could be in your home. It could be at a favorite park or things where they love to be.
Yeah. What kind of questions? Well, that's part that amazed me, where the funeral director asking, I'm sure it must have been 1,000 questions for my customer. And I could not believe how they didn't know, you know, a good percentage of them. I was truly amazed by the questions that you need to know when someone passes away. It's
Yes,
like,
there's well, you know, and it's not even just about the money either. It's about making sure that you did that, because like I said, I didn't know from my experience what my mom would have wanted. I still don't know, but I just hope in my heart that I made that right decision. But for myself, I'm prearranged, because I don't want my children to go through what I went through, because it was terrible, absolutely terrible. And you know, I didn't even know about costs or things like that, but it was like, what am I going to do afterwards? What do I do with this banking stuff? Where do I find this stuff? Where do I find health insurance stuff, or just things about your mortgage, everything? It's, and in your app, it really inspired me, because I think that, you know, no matter where you are in the world,
you
you
have,
need to have things like this, because things change. You may live in one area for 15 years and move to another. Relationships change. Everything changes. So it's
Change.
no matter what, that app isn't going to change unless you change it, and nothing's going to change unless you do something about it.
Right. And I always say to people, just do one little thing. You know, there might be 10 things to do, but do one.
Make a list.
Yeah, because you're so much further ahead than someone else,
That's right.
and care about yourself as well as your loved ones around you. Because I do know, for example, like your mom, once they become sick, um, there's no getting anything out of them. You can't lie with
Oh.
them in hospice and say, where are your bank accounts? You
Well,
can't.
and in my situation, my mom unexpectedly died in front of me, and at that point, I was so in shock. I didn't even know a number for help. I
No.
didn't know who to call. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't believe what I was going through. So that night, I went home, and I knew now it's facing reality. It's time to sit down and make these decisions. It happened so fast. A lot of the things, honestly, I don't remember. To be honest, it was that intense. A lot of things are going through, guilt, am I doing the right thing, like I said? And so there was some really fast decisions I had to make at a very young age. And it's not even just about age. It's just when you're going through that grief, it's normal. You just lose everything. Everything that you thought of is just gone. Yeah, so that's, the documentation part, that's what would have helped me through it. And I wish I would have had that for my mom. But that is why I've learned to not do that for my children. So, like I said, you don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow, and you need to plan ahead. It's all about planning. We plan for weddings, we plan for showers, we plan for traveling, we plan for everything in life. And we need to plan for something that's going to happen. And why not start when you're younger? And I always try to tell the younger generation, start now. The younger you start, the less the cost is going to be.
Yeah. Because
And you can have your funeral paid off in 3 years, 5 years, 15, 20 years. Take whatever is affordable,
yeah,
and fit it in, and that fits in your budget. Because I myself like to be organized and know how much I'm paying every month. And I mean, a lot of people, you live out of your means. And for myself, I've learned that this is important. This is
yeah,
just as important as having a wedding and having a baby. And it's, we have babies and we plan for education for our children, but we don't plan to protect them by paying for funerals.
absolutely. We sure don't. At least I haven't come across any that have.
Yeah.
Well, it must be a very few percentage of them that have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I really appreciate today. Talking about this was absolutely important on 9/11. During COVID, with all our changes and how everybody's feeling, and you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, because we don't know if we're going to be come across COVID somewhere or it's going to hit our family. We don't know a lot of things, so why not be a little bit more prepared for the inevitable, really,
Yeah.
because we don't know when. So I appreciate you taking the time, and I know that we're going to have this discussion again in a few months, because we need to get this out there to people. We really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel a privilege to be a part of this wonderful backup plan that you have going, because it's a wonderful thing. It's absolutely wonderful, and I think that it's going to be a great tool to help others in any situation. And
Absolutely.
having that plan for everything in life, you have to have a plan. And I'm just very appreciative that you asked me to be here, and I'm hoping that I helped any of you people that don't know what to do or what's the next step. Just go and talk to somebody and make sure that that they haven't, because maybe they've already, your parents or loved ones have already made that decision, and you just didn't even know, because they didn't want to talk about it. They thought, oh. So thank you for listening to me talk, and hopefully I educated you all.
Oh, absolutely. You're an expert in this industry by far, with all your experiences and your knowledge, and I really, really appreciate it, and letting our listeners feel it. I want you to feel it. I want you to appreciate it, and to say that maybe we can change one life. What do they call that? One life at a time. That's my journey, one life at a time. Thank you so much, Shannon, for taking the time. It looks like a beautiful day in Ontario, in Windsor today, and I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank Shannon for being our expert interviewer today, and thank you so much. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Our podcast is on 7 different platforms. Spotify and iTunes are probably the 2 biggest. And of course, our live broadcast. And we will be having workshops, and funeral arrangements will be one of those. So I might grab a hold of Shannon, and we can talk about that in a workshop as well. So stay tuned for a lot more of these podcasts to get more information, to get motivated, inspired. I hope Shannon has done that with any of you, because it is important. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Tina, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thanks. Stay safe.
Thank you, you as well.
Stay safe. Bye. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.